While it may seem ludicrous for any Halo game to be made on any Nintendo console, let alone the DS, this was the exact idea a group of developers had with a demo simply known as Halo DS. On November 4th, 2007, IGN journalist Matt Kazmana claimed to have played a DS build of Halo via his blog. He even went as far as to say that the game was completely up and running with no hiccups. This post initially gained a lot of skeptics due to the lack of proof of this build's existence. It didn't help that in an interview between two Bungie employees via Slickonera dismissed the existence of any work done on a DS build of Halo. Now facing even more accusations of faking the story, Matt would proceed to upload screenshots and even footage of himself playing Halo DS on his follow-up blog, with claims that Halo DS was made by a AAA studio as a pit despite not being endorsed by Microsoft or Bungie. It was probably due to this lack of endorsement, along with the console wars between Nintendo and Xbox, that led to this build never materializing into anything. What remains of Halo DS are screenshots and gameplay, with it still being up in the air on which developer worked on it. But considering the similar HUD and gameplay to GoldenEye, Rogue Agent has led to speculation of EA being that AAA developer. In E3 2004, the first ever showcase of New Super Mario Bros. Was shown off to the public in its beta build. The most notable difference that can be seen is that of the scenery, with the setting being that of a forest having both a day, sunset, and night variation. There was also differences in the coins, question blocks, and pipes having a more basic and 2D-like design in comparison to the more detailed approach they took in the final release. And for the bottom screen, it contains Nintendo Presents New Super Mario Bros. As a placeholder, along with a couple of mushrooms moving across the screen. One last detail that is worth mentioning is an extended showcase of the build only shown off on the E3 press floor that was written by Nintendo World reporter Chris Martino. The clip opens to an old-school Fireball Mario, looking even better than ever. As he takes out Goombas with the greatest of ease, Mario returns to breaking blocks, collecting coins, and hopping down suspicious pipes in what we can only assume is an attempt to save the princess. In addition to the standard jump everyone loves, he also has a nifty backflip jump. In one section, Mario grows into gigantic proportions, allowing him to simply run over enemies, including his arch nemesis Bowser. Of course, Bowser isn't without a new trick or two, as the clip shows him running through a Mario-styled level and even jumping on top of the flagpole at the end. Rest assured, we'll be watching this one very closely. Despite us knowing the existence of this extended cut of the build, the footage, along with the build itself, still remains unavailable aside from a couple of screenshots and a small clip. You cannot have a video mentioning the lost media of the DS without mentioning the ever so elusive Mean Girls. The game, based on the tie-in film of the same name, was planned to release in the US on April 20th, 2010, and on Europe on September 11th, 2010. But the game's release would get cancelled at the last minute even after obtaining an ESRB rating, resulting in a couple of screenshots and details appearing within delisted listings and game websites despite it remaining lost. It was this notoriety of the game's elusiveness that led to a growing interest from places in the internet like the Lost Media Wiki, who would contact the likes of 505 Games for any knowledge regarding Mean Girls, who would respond by mentioning how the game was cancelled, further backing up the reason for the game's rarity. But following this, the search for Mean Girls would kind of die out due to the lack of ways to advance the search. That would be the case until Lost Media YouTuber Raymona would announce the possession of a copy in 2021. Following this announcement, she would make a series of videos regarding Mean Girls, ranging from soundtrack being uploaded, walkthroughs, and even making a documentary. But due to the game being horribly bugged, along with legal concerns, led to the game not being dumped. And unless another copy makes its way online, it will stay that way. You would be surprised when you realize that most of the lost media regarding DS consist of demos, small displays of what a console could do without making it into a full release. And during E3 of 2004, a lot of these demos were shown off, with 3 being the focus of this segment. Mario's Face was a short tech demo developed by Nintendo's EAS division. It allowed you to play around and alter the face proportions of both Mario and Wario. While this gimmick was reused for Super Mario 64 DS, it was heavily restricted when compared to the monstrosities you can make in this demo. Another Nintendo demo that also allowed for interactivity was that of the Pikachu DS Tech demo, which took many cues from Hey You Pikachu, along with introducing some new toys. These consisted of instruments to play, like the guitar and xylophone, being able to draw on the bottom screen, use balloons, measure the size of Magikarp, and touch Pikachu via the stylus. The game, while being in depth for a tech demo, never became anything aside from the Pikachu model and the touch features being reused for the title screen for Pokemon Dash. The last tech demo, this time developed by Sega Sonic Team, was Sonic DS. The game had you play as Sonic to increase his speed by flicking the bottom screen from left to right, and tapping the screen to jump over nearby obstacles. This continued for a minute or so until the game ends with some text that states to look out for upcoming Sega titles for the DS. While Sega used Sonic DS as a way to confirm their presence on the handheld, there was no further statements on if Sonic DS was gonna be one of these titles. But considering the simplicity of the demo, it was likely it was nothing more than a quick demo made to build up hype for Sega games. Matsman was a cancelled 2D indie run-and gun developed by Siamese game studio TF8 and published by Lexon Entertainment. While the game may initially sound similar to another indie game that would later come out, Matsman was different by using a black and white art style that looked like it came out of a notebook. On an official press release about the two companies' 2-year agreement, Matsman was stated to release in Q1 of 2009 on the DS and on the PS3 and Wii during Q2, with Matsman being stated to have a story based on Grimm and Anderson's fairy tales. But unexpectedly, Lexon Entertainment would no longer publish the title in 2008 before closing down. But this wouldn't be the end for Matsman, as startup publisher Mamba Games would pick up a title for a second quarter release in 2009. But after this announcement, Matsman was just vanished. No further screenshots, gameplay, updates, or even a simple announcement of the game's cancellation. Considering the controversies that Mamba Games would face regarding their unfair pay and contractual breaches, perhaps those scandals were also seen within the background development for Matsman. But we may never know the real story behind Matsman's cancellation, and as of right now, no build has resurfaced. In March 18, 2005, a temporary theme park known as Pokepark was opened to the public in Japan, and anyone who entered the theme park with a DS could use Download Play to access a new title known as Pokepark Fishing Rally DS. It was nothing more than a simple fishing game with various locations to capture water-type Pokemon, with the highest scores being displayed throughout the Download Play stations. The game would make further appearances throughout other Poke-related areas, like the Pokemon Store around mid to late 2005 in Japan, with the game now having a small banner to indicate its affiliation to the Pokemon stores. Aside from the game being released during Pokefesta events, the last sighting of this demo was in Taiwan for the Pokepark opening in 2006, with the game now being translated in Chinese. Due to Download Play deleting all data for games after a 12-hour period, it made the availability of this game dependent on which events it was held. And with Pokepark Fishing Rally DS now being obsolete, it makes it impossible for any copy to be found on DS consoles that once had it. What remains of this game is a couple of screenshots and YouTube re-uploads. Wouldn't you believe that even before Mario Kart DS released, there were plans for a different game to release first as the first ever spin-off? This brings us to Mario Mortars. The game was initially envisioned by Yoji Sato, a Japanese game developer known for making Odama on the GameCube or the more infamous Seaman on the Dreamcast. During the early 2000s, he would have constant conversations with Shigeru Miyamoto and Satoru Iwata regarding game development while having tea. It would be in these conversations where Sato's love for sculpting metal would give him a game idea to talk about. This game idea would later transform into the concept of Mario Mortars. In this game, you were able to make your own engines and other parts of the vehicle via sculpting metal. The game was also planned at one point on using the mic for acceleration, but was removed due to the concerns of kids losing their breath while performing the activity. While the game was able to get far enough into development for concept art to be made, no one knows on how far the game made it into development, or why the game got cancelled to begin with not even Sato having an answer. But considering the complexity of building engine parts, maybe Nintendo thought the game was too complex for their younger audience to understand. The game would remain unknown to the public until being mentioned in Yoji Sato's presentation in Reboot Develop Conference in 2018. Aside from this conference and the concept art that's been shown off, Mario Mortars still remains as a mystery. While Metroid Dread may have gotten its release a couple of years ago, that still doesn't take away the legacy it had when it was nothing more than a rumor. Metroid Dread started its development in 2005 for the DS as a direct follow-up to Metroid Fusion. The game's main angle was to evoke dread within the player via a constant immovable entity chasing the player within a new alien world. It was similar to what they had with SAX in Fusion, but developers wanted to take the creep factor even further. This initial drive is what made Metroid Dread's development so complicated, due to the difficulties of developing an entity like this within the DS's hardware. It didn't help that Metroid Dread would keep appearing as listings for upcoming titles on Nintendo magazines, further driving more speculation on what Metroid Dread could have really been, with even Retro Studios making allusions to Metroid Dread via the release of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. In the end, Metroid Dread was able to have a prototype finished and was shown off to other divisions, at the cost of losing the initial fear and dread that came with the concept, with Sakamoto putting the project on hold for the time being until its reinvention in 2021. While Metroid Dread is released, the original DS title still remains a mystery, with no screenshots, concept art, or even footage being shown off, despite other info regarding the prototype's development being released.